So 9 years ago, my friend Omar and I drove my purple minivan through a cornfield. Now here's what happened. We were driving through a cornfield because earlier we were driving home from school and we saw one of my friends walking down the street on Crosstown Boulevard down in Andover. So what we did was we pulled up really slowly behind him. He was walking down on the sidewalk. We pulled up really slowly behind him. We just kind of followed him, kind of creeped along. And he didn't really notice for a while. So it was like a half mile. We're driving really slow behind him. And all of a sudden he turns around and looks at us like, what's this car doing? He didn't know who we were. He didn't know what my van looked like. And so we sped off as he looked back at us. But then I thought, why don't we keep doing this? So I pulled into a driveway. I turned around, and I went the other way and just slowly drove by him. And he started to get a little bit creeped out. He starts walking a little bit faster. And I thought, why not do it again? So we pulled into another driveway. We flipped around, and we slowly creeped behind him again. And this time I saw him reach into his pocket, pull out his phone, and start dialing a number. And so I sped off, and I got so scared that I drove through a cornfield. Not like big corn stalks still up, like it was a flattened cornfield, but I drove right through it to try to get to the other side of Andover because I don't want any part of it, right? I didn't want to get in trouble by the police. But what I love about this story, what it reminds me of, is there's so much freedom when we get our driver's license. I was 16 when this happened. I thought I had so much freedom that I could just drive through a cornfield and have, no repercussions at all, which was true because I didn't get caught. But there's so much freedom when it comes to driving, and I think that freedom is something that all of us want in our hearts, right? We all want some sort of freedom. That's why we live in America, one of the freest countries in the world. And while, we're not completely free in every area of life, in America, we have so much freedom. We can pretty much do whatever we want, which is like an amazing feeling as long as we don't hurt other people, which is great, right? But I think that even though we live in one of the freest countries in the world, even though we live in so much freedom, a lot of us still don't live in freedom. And I'm not talking about we're not free to speak, we're not free to do this and that. I'm talking about spiritual, mental freedom that we're not living in because we have things in our lives that are bogging us down and keeping us from living in our full potential as free people in Jesus. And one of the biggest things that I see bogging teenagers today down, keeping us from living in freedom, especially spiritual and emotional freedom, is pressure in school. The pressure to succeed in school, the pressure to get good grades, to manage the expectations that your parents have, that they're putting constant pressure on you to get A's and A's and A's and A's constantly, right, in school. But you also have to work 20 hours a week. You're in sports. You got to go home and do your homework. Life can get stressful, and the added pressure of having to be successful in school can make us feel so bogged down, and it can hurt us mentally and spiritually. And so we're in a series right now that we're starting tonight called Free. Because I want you guys to be free. And we've talked about sin, we've talked about anxiety, we've talked about fear, but I want you guys to be free from everything. And so whatever's weighing you guys down during this series, I want you guys to get it out in the open. But what I see every single Wednesday night at all of our campuses, what I hear from our leaders is so many of you guys, and I've been there too, are struggling with the pressure to succeed in school. Pressure that comes from yourself internally to think that you have to be the best. You're putting so much expectation on yourself. Pressure from your parents telling you that you have to be the best. You've got to do this, this, and this. You got to live up to your standards, and that's what you have to do. You got pressure from colleges that are saying that you have to have this GPA in order to get in, but a little secret about that, you'll be fine, right? Even if you don't have the best GPA, you can still get into college. Don't worry about that. And plus, there's so many things that you guys have to worry about. Don't put the stress to be perfect in school on yourself. And this is the reality of the life that we have, is that school can get stressful, home life can be stressful, we got to work, we got to do sports, we have so many things going on. But Jesus said in John 10:10, he said, I have come so that you may have life and life abundantly. And what Jesus is talking about, he's saying you can live life, you can do your thing, you can be stressed, you can get good grades, you can go to work, you can be successful in your life, you can have a kid, you can have your own family, a big house, you can do all that, you can follow the American dream, you can just live your life. But there's another life, there's another element, sort of like this added step that Jesus has to life. He's saying, if you follow me, Your life isn't just going to be another standard life in this world. If you follow me, your life isn't just going to be another cookie-cutter life in this world. Your life is going to be amazing. You're going to feel fulfillment in life. The stress that other people have, that they struggle with, the things that bog them down in life, you don't have to stress about those things because you have me. I will be with you. I'm going to give you life and life abundantly. And so as we talk about academic pressure, or this pressure that we face in school, some of us might feel like, yeah, I feel really pressured. I feel stressed all the time. I feel like I have to get the perfect grades, and I just can't do it because my classes are so hard. Some of us are like, yeah, there's a little bit of stress, but it's okay, I can manage well. And some of us are like, I don't do anything, so I don't stress about anything. But here are 3 signs that you are facing intense, unhealthy pressure from school. Number 1, you are abusing caffeine or Adderall or anything like it. Some of us have Adderall so that we can focus in school a little bit better, and it helps us, and it's for medical reasons, and yeah, use it if you need to. But once we start abusing Adderall, once we start taking too many so that we can get our stuff done, or we can study more, or we can do better on tests, that's when we know that we have a problem. And Adderall isn't always our problem. The pressure from school is a problem. Your identity might be your problem. Or if you're abusing caffeine, if you're like me and how I was in high school, and I drank like 6 pops a day. I wasn't a coffee drinker. I didn't go to Caribou, but I drank like 6 pops a day. It was terrible. But I did that so I could stay awake because I needed to do stuff. And number 2, if you have an obsession with your grades. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful in school. I mean, it's glorifying to God when we use our gifts that God has given us to be smart and be successful in school. But if we're obsessing about our grades, if all we can do is think about our grades, and just think about, I got to do best on this next test. I got to do better. I got to do better. I got to do better. I got to be the best in my class. If we're so obsessive about it, we have a problem. And number 3, your anxiety is through the roof. If you've noticed that when you go to school, your anxiety just goes way up, you probably have an issue with how you're doing in school. And that's something that you need to work through. That's something that you need to go through in your life because you don't want to live life stressed out. You don't want to live life bogged down because Jesus called us to live a life of freedom. And that's the life that we want to live. So if you can relate to one or any of these 3 signs, you are facing unhealthy pressure from school. And we want to help you through that. And this can come from multiple places. This unhealthy pressure can come from 4 different places. Your parents putting too much pressure on you. If you've got parents breathing down your neck, have an honest conversation with them. But number 2, it can come from comparing yourself to others. If you put so much pressure on yourself to succeed in school, and it's because you're looking at your friend or another person in your class who's doing so good, and all you can do is constantly compare yourself, that's a problem. And number 3, if you expect too much from yourself. Now, this is a big one because all of us want to be successful, right? All of us want to have this sort of standard like, yeah, I want to be smart. I want to be rich, right? I want to have this certain standard of living. But sometimes we put unhealthy expectations on ourselves. We have to learn who we are, how God has gifted us, and live our life based on that. And then number 4, other people telling you that you need to succeed and have a plan for your life right now. I'm not kidding you. I just had a conversation with somebody's parents. This is in 8th grade at our youth group about how they're so stressed about where they're going to go to college. In 8th grade. That's 5 more years. Stop stressing so much about what's going to happen 5 years down the road and enjoy where you are now. But no matter where your pressure is coming from, you have to know that you're not alone. In fact, there's a woman in the Bible, one of Jesus' closest friends, who dealt with a similar situation. And so we're going to read Luke chapter 10, verses 38 and 42, or through 42. And this story doesn't completely have to do with school, because nowhere in the Bible does it really talk about school. But what this lady goes through, what this lady's experiencing, has a lot to do with academic pressure. It can relate to it a lot. And so we start in verse 38, and it says this. It says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. And so she came to Jesus and she said, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Jesus said, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about so many things, but few things are needed. Or indeed, only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. Now, this story is about Jesus coming to this lady's house. Her name is Martha, and Martha's got a sister. And Martha has this crazy need to make sure everybody's needs are being met, right, at her house. She's very hospitable. She wants to make sure everybody's eating. She wants to make sure everybody's comfortable, everybody's warm, everybody's got a blanket. Some of you guys have a mom or a grandma who's just like that. Like, hey, are you hungry? No, I'm not really hungry. Okay, I'll get you something. Like, they're just like crazy. You always need to be eating. That's how my grandma was. If I'm at my grandma's house, I need to be eating. Otherwise, something must be wrong with me, according to my grandma. It's crazy. But Martha is so consumed with making sure everything is set that she is stressing out. She is anxious. And she even goes to Jesus. She's like, Jesus, I'm trying to get the house ready. I'm trying to make sure you guys are all comfortable. And yet look at Mary. She's just sitting next to you, listening. And Jesus says, no, that's exactly what she needs to do. Right? She's not so worried about what's going on in life right now. She's worried about what's in front of her. When Jesus is in front of her, everything stops for Mary. And that shows a spiritual sign of maturity in Mary's life. That she knows her priorities. She knows that when Jesus makes himself present, she is going to be with Jesus and not doing anything else. And so here is the moral of the story that we kind of learn from Martha and from Mary, is that when we are facing pressure in life, especially facing pressure to succeed in school, you're going to face that pressure. You're going to face the pressure to take hard classes, get all your work done with excellence, get into the best colleges, have a great career in your future. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But when it starts to become unhealthy, is when we start to face unhealthy pressure, we start to face anxiety, it starts to get us worried every single day. And we have to recognize that sign and say, if I'm stressed out, if I'm constantly focused on being excellent in school, if it's just making me worried every single day, if it's making me feel anxious every single day, if it's even getting me depressed sometimes, I've got to recognize when that's an issue. And I've got to see what Mary did versus what Martha did. Is Mary made the priority of putting Jesus in front of even being hospitable in the moment. The question that we have to answer is, why am I alive? Why do I exist in this world? See, school is important. I'm not saying it's not important, but if excelling in school is the reason that you are on earth, then you're never going to feel fulfilled. And that goes for every area of life. If excelling in your career or in certain relationships or in anything in life is your primary reason for existing on this earth, you are never going to feel free. Jesus is the only one who can give us complete and total freedom. Not just freedom like in a country, but spiritual, mental, emotional freedom. We don't have to live life stressed. We don't have to live life so anxious and constantly under pressure because we have a Savior and his name is Jesus. The reason we exist on this earth is to love God and serve his world. That's why we are here. And there's one small detail that I think we miss so much in this story that we just read, but it's so crucial and there's so much depth, so much meaning to this that if we miss it, we're going to miss a lot of what our life means here on earth. And so here's what it says. It says in verse 39, it said that Martha had a sister called Mary, and she sat at the Lord's feet and she listened to what he said. Now here's something so crucial. Back in Jesus' time, we're in Hebrew culture, Jewish culture, because Jesus, the disciples, all his friends, they're all Jewish, right? It's their culture, their tradition that when somebody of authority or when somebody of somebody who's really important and they're teaching somebody something or they're speaking, everybody sits down. Not just like in chairs, like how we do here at school or anything like that, but everybody sits down at the feet of whoever is teaching or whoever is speaking, and they usually sit on the ground. Now this is weird to us because like when you guys come to youth group, you don't sit on the floor unless you're in Isanti. Sometimes you guys sit on the floor. But like when you guys go to school or anything like that, you don't sit on the floor. When your parents are like yelling at you or like commanding you to do something, or they're just like telling you to do something, you don't like walk up and quick sit at their feet. Like that's super weird. But Jewish people in their culture, they do this. And it's a symbol. It's a sign that whoever they are sitting at the feet of, they are under that person's authority. And so when Mary goes and sits at the feet of Jesus, it's in there for a reason. It's not just, oh, Mary went and sat over there, or she went and listened. The author of this, Luke, specifically said that she sat at the feet of Jesus and listened to what he said. And that's very important to understanding why we exist here on earth. We're under the authority of Jesus. And when we live our lives like that, when we live like we're under his authority, his love, and his grace, our priorities fall into place. What we're supposed to do in life falls into place. When we follow Jesus, love him, serve him, everything else becomes secondary. And yes, we want to excel in life. We want to excel in school, and that glorifies God when we do. But when we're facing unhealthy pressure or anxiety, possibly even depression or just constant frustration with school because it's so stressful, we have to ask ourselves, am I sitting at the feet of Jesus? Or am I sitting at somebody else's feet? Am I sitting at the feet of Jesus? Is he the one who I'm submitting my life to? That he is in control? Whatever Jesus wants me to do, I will do? Or is something else in my life becoming priority number one? Is something else in my life becoming a major distraction? Because when that happens, we're going to feel the consequences of that. If school becomes number one, or if living up to the expectations of our parents becomes number one, or even living up to our own expectations becomes number one priority in our life, we're going to feel stressed. We're going to feel the pressure constantly. And so we have to learn to sit at the feet of Jesus, to recognize that he is so good. He is our teacher, and he is the one that we follow. And the pressure of school completely falls off our shoulders when we know that we are not defined by our grades. We are not defined by meeting certain expectations, but we are defined by God. We are his children. And we are dearly loved, and that can never change. So I want to leave you with 2 practical steps if you're facing just overwhelming pressure from school and the overwhelming pressure and expectations that come with getting good grades or whatever that might be for you. But number 1, have an honest conversation with whoever that pressure is coming from. If it's your parents, sit down and talk to them. And if you're like, my parents are never going to listen to me, they're just going to think I'm a baby, I'm a millennial Generation Z, they're just going to say you're lazy or whatever, do your work. If that's how your parents are going to react, write them a letter. That way they have to read the letter, they have to get through the whole thing, they have to put all their focus on your words, you get everything you want out of the way, they have to read it. They can't interrupt you, but write them a letter. Get that out in the open because they need to know what you're going through and what you're facing, and hopefully they're understanding. But number 2 is have an honest conversation with God. If you're feeling that expectations or that pressure that comes from school, tell God what you're going through. And don't just tell him how you're feeling. Ask him how you can get through it. Ask him to bring you to make this whole situation a blessing instead of a trial. Because that's what trials end up being in our lives when we put God in the mix, is they end up turning to blessings. But guys, the most important thing that I want you guys to be is free. I want you guys to be free from your sins, free from the pressures of this world, and recognize that Jesus can give you abundant life. He can make your life amazing and free. But what we have to do is we have to go to him. We have to be willing to put him as priority number 1 in our lives and saying everything else is going to be secondary because God is that good.